We have a treat today for all you teen parents out there. Smith Alley is the founder of Live Life Bigger Foundation, an organization that is raising awareness to live life bigger and put down your phone and do something you love. Smith is a senior in high school who struggled with the harmful effects of pornography and social media for about 5 years. He decided to change the course of his life at 14 and went through an addiction recovery program. Through that process, he fell in love with helping other people. At the age of 16, he started a company called Protect Strong that helps families set up parental restrictions on devices and create healthy social media habits. I'm sure many parents out there, just like me, are wondering how you can get your kids to finish their homework, and he's over here changing the world. This is not something you normally hear from teenagers, but we think it's so important for both parents and teens to hear these stories and learn from them. Thank you for joining us, Smith. Can you take a few minutes just to give us some of your background story?
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. Yeah, so my name is Smith Alley, and I'll tell you, Becky, you along with my mom actually have to get me to do my homework. And like we were talking before, do my laundry and everything like that. So I'm very normal.
That's good to hear.
I still leave my shoes out. I leave the milk out on the counter. Very, very normal. Anyway, I'm a senior in high school, and I'm the founder of both the Live Life Bigger Foundation and Protect Strong. So when I was a little kid, I remember life being just completely normal until the first grade. And life before the first grade was good, and it was happy, and everybody was nice, and I had all these friends. And then I stood up in the first grade to introduce myself, and I had to stutter, which I thought was completely normal. It had never been mentioned to me. I had never been made fun of for it. And so I stood up in first grade, got a little nervous, standing up in front of the class. And I said, ha, 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 hi, my name's Smith. And one of the girls that was sitting at a table next to mine was like mocking me. She said, ha, 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 hi. And so I remember that being the first time I'm like, oh, I'm not what I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I'm different than everybody else. And because of that, I'm worth a little less. And so then, of course, this happens to a lot of people, by the way. This is a kind of a core feeling in most addicts. This is a core feeling in a lot of people who struggle with depression. And so at the age of 9, I got one of those Android tablets that were like the new thing when I was 9 years old. And I was so excited. I was browsing one time and clicked on a link that wasn't what it appeared to be. And I was exposed to pornography. And, I want to say that my parents were very good about porn, and we had the conversation starting at like 8 years old. We had everything. We had restrictions again, like even up until the point where I was 14, I didn't have a phone. I always just had like an iPod Touch. My parents were pretty strict. My dad was an army guy, and so it was kind of ship-shape house. And so I was exposed to pornography. We had the conversations about what to do when this happens. I turn off the tablet just like I was supposed to. And then I remembered, I'm supposed to go tell mom and dad. Mm-hmm. And then I thought about what I'd just seen. And I felt like those same feelings that I felt in first grade of not being enough. I'm like, I'm not supposed to look at this stuff. This stuff is bad, and I'm not supposed to see it. And so I was too ashamed to tell them about the experience. And so because of that, I didn't tell them. And then about a year later, at 10 years old, porn crept back into my life as something that was regular and something that I used to make myself feel better. It was a small fix to everything that I was feeling and dealing with. It was the only love that I felt worthy of. It was the only love that I felt would love me without being able to hurt me. I felt like everybody in my life at some point would hurt me, and then their love wouldn't be there anymore. And so I went to porn. Of course, then being a teenager, going into like my preteens, 12 years old, I got Snapchat and social media, and that was just a wreck, because then it was really bad on my mental health, and I was looking at all these people and comparing myself to them. And, you know, like most people do, I saw this idea of toxic perfectionism, that everybody out there was perfect and I wasn't, because I was this chubby kid with a stutter, from Bountiful, Utah, and I didn't know what to do. And you know, I had a lot of struggles, and so I felt like I was insufficient. I felt like I wasn't enough, and so that led to just my mental health deteriorating completely. Um, and as that relationship got worse, I went to porn more and more, and to comfort me and to kind of find solace in that. And because of that, because I was buying love from pornography, the cost was my heart. And, you know, depression and anxiety just got worse and worse. I began to have some suicidal ideation. And then finally at 14, I got into some legal trouble. You know, curiosity from pornography led me into a relationship that ended with false accusations against me. Of course, I just want to kind of bring up the idea that, you know, there are people that terrible things happen to them. And I want to recognize that and say that you are not alone. But in this instance, there was some emotional pain that turned into anger. And so at 14 years old, I was sitting in a courtroom in front of a judge, wondering where my life had gone wrong. You know, I was a Christian kid. I was raised in a church, and I was supposed to be making good choices with a good life, and my parents raised me right. And that's just not how life was. And so, you know, when kind of crap hit the fan, I was faced with a huge decision, and I made the decision to turn my life around and to become somebody that could help other people, and who could keep other people from being in those dark holes, because I really felt like I experienced some of the lowest of the lows, and it wasn't fun. And I don't want any other young man, young woman, person to ever have to feel like that ever again.
That's a huge life to live in 14 years. That you would never, in 17 years that you have already. That's a lot of big stuff to carry around as a little kid. And I think one of the things, and I know Bridget can speak to this as well, is as parents, we can see the change in our kids. Like, you can see when they start to get really snippy and mean and have some of those mental health issues where they don't feel like they are good enough because they're watching YouTube, where everything that these kids have is paid for and it's all fake, or they go on these trips and now your trips aren't good enough or whatever. And so there's actually times where we've had to, like, we've taken away all of the technology, and it's amazing how much nicer the kids become because of that. And that's why I really love your whole the live bigger, the whole concept of put your phone down and actually appreciate where you are and what you're doing, because you can't appreciate it from sitting behind YouTube or sitting behind whatever. Get out and appreciate your life. And so I love that you're doing this, because like I said, it's a whole lot of weight to carry as a young kid when you were younger. And it's great that you found the like ray of sun in all of this, to be able, like, you know what, you're not alone, other kids out there, this happens to everybody, and this happened to me, and here's what you can do.
Yeah, totally. I think that I tell parents all the time that I think that kids are meant to be happy, and that our natural instinct is to be happy and to have love and joy. In the Bible, it says, Adam fell that man might be, and men are that they might have joy. And, you know, whether you believe in the Bible or not, I think that rings true to everyone. And so I think that with that thought, if there's something going on with your kid, if your kid is not happy, there's a reason behind that, whether it be just overuse of screens, whether it be pornography or depression, there's something going on. And so I love that thought of just like, yeah, my whole message is to live life bigger. There's an unused potential in my generation. There is so much that we could be doing, but we just don't. We just sit on our butts and we don't do anything. And so, yeah, that's the message I'm trying to spread. Live life bigger, live a life beyond the screen, have joy, have love in your life, and help others.
And one of my favorite videos, I just love your message in general. And one of my favorite videos that I saw with you and your mom at the doctor's office, and it was the screen time versus the lean time, and how on average 9 hours a day, children are on their tablets and their devices. And so I love your little clip of the video and you basically saying, Mom, don't you agree? This is saying get outside more and be active and put down the phones and really be present and go back to being a child. And I know for our generation, we didn't grow up with the social media pressure, let alone you guys are, this generation is already under enough pressure, let alone you add the technology and social media. And social media creates such a facade that you really lose that human connection. So I kind of also want to go into one of your, I think it was with your cousins, and you guys did an open kind of Q&A with your mom and really just discussing different topics all together. And one thing that most parents don't realize is even if you discipline your child these days, the kids still get the phone and the kids still control the parents, and the parents are so afraid to parent. So one thing that I like how you broke it down was knowing that when you take that phone away, the emotional attachment. Can we just go into a little bit of like, if you say, if you were grounded and your mom took your phone away, just that emotional attachment, just because most parents in this generation don't see that there really isn't a human that human connection there. And oftentimes you lose your child the minute that you take that phone away, they're shut down. The world has ended for them, and it really does affect their mental health.
Yeah, totally. So for all parents listening, when you first hand your kids technology, whether it's to keep them from being bored or to help them because they're sad or mad, you immediately connect them to that piece of technology. And that is not their fault. The reason that they are glued to their phone, the reason why they are uncomfortable without it is not their fault. It was given to them, and now they are using it with human nature. It's human nature to want to be comforted. And so, you know, there's a point where, if you are having trouble with your kid, you can't just yank the phone away. Colin Karchner talked to a lot of healthcare workers who would say, Colin, most of the kids who come in because of suicidal ideology or attempts, it's because of their phone. There was one who said, Colin, there was one girl whose parents told her that she was going to go away to this awesome summer camp, and there'd be kayaking and hiking and fishing and everything. You'd get to spend time outdoors with the people that are your age, and it's going to be amazing. And you won't have your phone for 6 weeks. And when she heard that, she cut herself because she was afraid of leaving that attachment, that phone. And so there is a connection that happens when we use our phones, our technology, to deal with our feelings. And I think it's one of the biggest problems that my generation has, is that we don't know how to feel. A lot of us think that we have anxiety, but we don't. We feel anxious and we don't know how to deal with that. And so we develop anxiety. A lot of us think that we have depression, but we don't. We're just depressed in that moment, and we've never felt that before. And so we push it down, and then we develop depression. So there's all these problems that it's just because we don't know how to sit with our feelings, which is something that it's always my goal to be able to sit with myself in a room for at least 30 minutes and just be okay with my feelings, be okay with my thoughts, and be okay with what I've done and where I'm going. And so, for parents out there that are dealing with kids who are going through something hard, there is a connection there between your kid and their technology. And when you pull that away, you cannot distance yourself too. There are a lot of parents who find out their son or daughter is viewing pornography or is engaging in something that they don't want them to, and they pull the phone, and then they're mad at the kid because the kid's been lying to them for years and years and years. And so they distance themselves because they're mad at their kids, and then they pull the only way that they cope emotionally with these feelings. They're taking that, and that's their phone, that's their tablet, that's their gaming system. So I think that it's important to realize, like, when you step away, when you pull that phone, you have to be there too, and you have to be honest and vulnerable. And I think, like, everything comes down to the fact that our human race, our society needs to be more honest and more vulnerable.
Amen.
We need to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And it's because I'm human, by the way. It's not because I'm less than human. I struggle, and that makes me human. And parents need to be able to say, hey, son, I'm taking your phone away because you're viewing pornography. This is why pornography is harmful, and I want you to be more than this. I don't want you to be enslaved to a content that is hurting other children, other people, and enslaving people. I don't want you to be a part of that. And so therefore, I'm taking this away, and we're going to set safe, healthy boundaries, safe, healthy guidelines, so that you can become a person who controls yourself and who becomes a helpful and a contributing member to this society, who helps and love others. And when you can have that vulnerability with your child, when you can say, this is why we're doing this is why we're making these parenting decisions, instead of the all too common, I'm doing this because I'm your mother, because I said so.
Yep.
You don't get to decide, I'm your mom.
Yep.
Those happen way too often. We need to be able to reason, and we need to be able to talk about it. And again, it's just that vulnerability that opens up conversations. And really, what people don't understand is, like, kids are smart and kids understand. And, you know, sometimes they don't act like they understand because they don't want to understand, but they do. And I think at the end of the day, if we can just try and be more understanding, both parents and kids, if we can try and open up that space of vulnerability so that we can talk about how we can be better, so that we can talk about what's harming our society, and how we can fix that, so that we can talk about the fact that we have struggles and that it's okay to struggle, but it's not okay to turn away from them. It's not okay to run away from those. I think that's what's important.
Well, it's crazy that you said this, because you have a thing posted on there, and I wish I would have seen this on Wednesday when the shit hit the fan with my 13-year-old. And it's the 3 things to do when your tween or teenager breaks a rule and slips up. And the very first rule is to give them a hug for 8 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, because your initial response as a parent is, what in the ever loving, whatever, we can go off on there, were you thinking when you did this, and this? Right. Making sure that you tell them that you love them, and then asking what you can do to help. Now, that doesn't mean that your child doesn't get in trouble. That's the thing that a lot of parents are like, oh, well, if I tell them that I love them, then that means that they don't get in trouble. No. There are consequences for the event that happened. But like you just said, if I take the phone away and then I also take away myself because I'm angry, now that child who is not yet able to mentally process the emotions, like you said, we haven't sat with them, we haven't allowed our kids to sit with their emotions, they don't know what to do with it, and now we're creating more trauma for kids that is not necessary. But I think as adults, we've got to figure out our trauma. We sit with our phones all the time and scroll through things so we don't have to listen to our own mind. So how are we supposed to expect our kids to do any different? And are you, as parents, realizing, like, when your kid comes home and they say something or they snap or they do whatever, that's not them being disrespectful? More often than not, it's something that happened at school that hurt them, and you're their safe space. So take it for really what it is, and don't, I'm not saying you never yell, because I would be a liar if I said I never yelled, but this idea of, are you their safe space? So when they hurt, they're confused, they don't know what's going on, they can come to you and be that person. But to your point about finding your emotional stability, Like my son, his immediate reaction is, oh, I'm just dumb. I'm this, which I also don't deal with well with not taking accountability for what you did wrong. Like, no, you're not dumb.
Right.
We already know you're not dumb. You know you're not dumb. You also just know you made a dumb decision. Those are two totally different things. And we've got to teach our kids. Well, it's two things. We got to teach our kids to accept what they've done. Sorry, you made a bad decision. We also need to realize that the frontal lobe of the brain, that connection as adults, we have it. We know, we can see 10 steps ahead that says, if I jump off this roof, this probably is going to happen, and that wouldn't be the
Right.
best thing. Kids at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, really all the way up to 25, they don't have that. So if you say, why, because the problem with him is he was thinking he was really smart and hiding in his sweatshirt on his phone, as if the teacher couldn't see him hiding in his sweatshirt on his phone. And it was like, what? But he couldn't make that connection. He really truly thought that, oh, I'm not going to get caught. And so for me, the biggest thing is, and I loved in your post, was your kid already knows they did wrong. The teacher already told them they did wrong. The teacher already told them that they were going to email or do whatever and tell your parents. So for the whole rest of the day, they know they did wrong. The very last thing they need when they come home is you to immediately start yelling at them. So I love the idea of, you know what? This is your safe space. Let me hug you. Let me tell you that you're okay. Let me ask you how things are going. And then we'll deal with the consequences of what it is, why you did it, and what it is that you get from it.
Right. Yeah. If they didn't think that they were doing wrong, they wouldn't be hiding it from you.
Right.
If I thought that using illegal substances was okay, I would do, cocaine right in front of my mother, but
Right.
I would never do that.
Right.
If I thought that watching porn was okay, I would have done it right in front of my mother,
Right.
but I wouldn't do any of that.
Right.
But I think it is important for kids, for you to give them that opportunity to admit it, and for you to give them that opportunity to say, all right, what happened? And it's so crucial that they say, I made a mistake, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
Yep.
And I think also a crucial part is that 8-second hug. It is so mind blowing how little love and connection there is in the family. I have a friend who writes my newsletter. She just moved to college. She's an amazing writer. She's 18 years old, and she never gets her 8-second hugs at home. When she was in high school, so every day it was my job. I felt like it was my job to go and give her an 8, 16, 24, 32-second hug, so that it would make up for the ones that she doesn't get at home, or that she doesn't get with her friends. And, really all humans ever wanted to be was accepted and loved. And if the first thing after a mistake is anger and, disappointment and shame, we're never going to learn to overcome those mistakes. And the only reason that I was ever able to turn the worst thing that I ever did in my life into the greatest success, to companies and speaking all over the country, the only way that I was able to do that is because when this happened with my parents, my mom gave me a hug. She looked me in the face and she said, Smith, I will fight for you, but you have to fight for yourself first. And when I heard those words, I was like, okay, we're doing this. And when I heard those words, I knew that there was hope, and I knew that she knew that I could do whatever I wanted to do, that I could turn my life around, and that I could make it what I wanted it to be. And so, it's just, we need that support. And I understand as parents, like, it is tiring because you don't have enough hours in the day to both pay the bills and to spend the amount of energy that you need to on your kids. No one in the world, there aren't 36 hours in the day, because that's what you'd need to be both a good parent and a provider for the family.
We fill those up too with nonsense as it is.
Yeah. And so it's like, I understand that it's hard. And of course, again, not a single person on this earth is perfect. And we're not going to expect that for parents to be perfect all the time, but we are going to expect for everybody to be honest and vulnerable, and to be able to talk to others, talk to their family, talk to their friends about what they're struggling with and how they can do better.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts that I was actually going to bring up was you apologizing, was like, sorry for COVID, but I'm giving out hugs and just making
Aw.
sure everyone felt the love. And you made that a point no matter what was going on, because some kids don't get told. What I heard between all of you and your cousins was the I'm so proud of you, how that really made them feel when they heard from their parents after every call. One of the girls said it really made her feel like her dad didn't necessarily fully know the kind of day she was having or what was going on with her, but she just heard after every call, I'm so proud of you, I love you, and how that really had an influence on her and what that did for her, as well as you even going on to say with your dad and you opening up your nonprofit and everything and how you're so busy and you're doing all of this stuff. Your dad even said, I love you. I don't say that enough, but you guys just having that moment and really, I think most parents overlook that is that unconditional love. And I heard it out of every single one of your guys' mouth and saying just those simple words of I love you, I'm proud of you, and just having a hug from your family and letting each other know you're there for one another and it's okay to make a mistake and not judging one another.
Yeah, I had during this COVID shutdown, I had 3 friends come to me after they had attempted suicide, and because they felt like I was a safe space, because they know that I'm not going to judge them in any way, shape, or form. And when you have someone show up at your door at 2 a.m, knocking on your window or ringing the doorbell, it really opens up your eyes to the fact that we're literally killing our kids' mental health just because we're afraid of something that we can't see.
Right.
And that is the point where I was done letting, this thing that I couldn't see, this thing that, yes, has taken many lives, but yet I wouldn't let other people feel like they were unloved because of it. And I loved what you said. Yeah, my cousin, her dad would always end the phone call with, I love you and I'm proud of you. And it's just the fact that, he didn't know what was going on with her, but yet he knew that she was struggling in some way, because we're human. Of course, we're all going to be struggling in some way. We all need to be told that someone is proud of us. We all need to have that validation that every day, despite not wanting to wake up, we wake up and we put on our big boy pants or our big girl pants and we go out and we take the day. And I remember that day with my dad when I was just having one of the busiest, most emotional days of my life. And he just stopped me and he grabbed me in the kitchen. I was hustling out the door and he grabbed me in the kitchen and he said, I love you. And I don't tell you that enough. And I'm proud of what you're doing. Which was from most parents, it might not be a big thing, but from my dad, who is not inherently emotional and not inherently lovey and stuff like that, it was it meant so much to me. And it meant so much for him to take the time to physically stop me. He physically stopped me in my tracks and he said, I love you and I'm proud of what you're doing. And I don't tell you that enough.
It
and I
probably
think
took a lot for him to do it, because
Yeah.
he isn't that way. So I wouldn't even be surprised if it took a few days for him to work it up in him to, all right, I'm going to do this.
Totally.
Mhm.
And I want to go into the suicide aspect just because we've seen what it's done to mental health. I know that you with your cousins talked as well about the suicide part, and a couple of you had lost friends due to suicide. And sorry for their loss and everything that you guys are now moving forward, really being that voice for the voiceless and making sure, even in your guys' day to day, I know 2 of the girls were like, you know what, this year, let's be more genuine. Let's be the nice girls on campus. So they then looked at themselves and were like, well, what can we do? And it's those little things that in ourselves where we have to step up and say, okay, did I see this coming? Could I help my friend? And I know listening to you and talking about your friend and one of the questions your mom had asked you and you went into the signs of depression. So if we can touch on that. And then as far as, and I know one of the questions that I really loved how you responded to it was when your mom asked you, if you could go back and give one last piece of advice to your friend prior to him committing suicide, what would that be?
Yeah. So I was told the other day by a teacher that the school district that I'm in has the highest suicide success rate in the country, which I wasn't aware of. I actually thought that was somewhere in Nevada because I know they're super low on the mental health charts. But again, I haven't confirmed that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's how it is. One of the schools that my cousins go to had 10 completed suicides in the span of 14 months, I believe.
Wow.
And it really just shows there is so much going on. There's a lot of pressure for young kids. And that's really hard to think about. And it's really hard to think that we live in a world where like you can't see people's pain. I had one of my old friends that took his life. We were friends in 7th grade, and we were buddies and we'd hang out. And in 8th and 9th grade, he started to drift away a little bit. And by the time we were in high school, we weren't hanging out at all. We'd nod to each other in the hall. And I remember many times walking past him in the hall, and he'd have his hood on and his AirPods in, and he wouldn't talk to anybody. His hat was low over his eyes. And I think that so many times I had a prompting to just go and talk to him and tell him that like I loved him and that I thought about him. And I never did that. And it's my biggest regret. And, thinking that if he would have just known he was loved, and if he would have just known that there was someone who cared about him and someone who wanted him to stay on this earth, it was just heartbreaking to me to even think back to that, because I don't want to get into that headspace where I'm just overthinking, what could I have done?
You're right.
Is it my fault?
Right.
I don't want to get into that headspace, but to a certain extent, it's made me now want to make sure that every single person I come in contact with knows that they are loved. In fact, for the first time, so I have that shirt that says free hugs on it that I got from Colin Karchner, and I wear it a lot of places, but since COVID, I got my first free hug from a stranger. At the grocery store, I had a mom come up to me and she goes, "Hey, are you serious about that offer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't, no one's taken me up on it
for a reason."
Yeah. And she came up and gave me a hug, and we were talking about, she was a psychology major, and we were talking about hugs and love and connection. And I just love the thought that we can make people who we don't even know feel like they're worth something. Yeah. Actually, this last week, on Wednesday, we have late starts at our school. So school doesn't start till 9:25, where usually it starts at 7:30. So I decided 2 weeks ago that on this last Wednesday, I was going to wake up early and cook pancakes for the whole school. And so me and my friends woke up, and, we took tables and chairs and our camp chefs down to the school parking lot, and we set up like chairs for people to sit at, and we brought our speakers and we're playing music and just cooking pancakes out in the parking lot. And everybody that walked by were like, "Hey, come get pancakes." And just like being able to have that little bit of connection, I could see made a difference in people's lives. I talked to this sophomore who I knew his older brother. His older brother graduated last year, and he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, you're Smith, right?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm Dallin's little brother." And, immediately, I gave him a hug, gave him some pancakes, and I was like, "Hey man, how's Dallin? Are you going to play lacrosse this year?" All this stuff. And you could just see, like, as he realized that he was recognized, as he realized that I saw him and that I was genuinely cared about where he was in life and what he was doing, he just he started to light up, and his eyes were bigger, and Like he held his chest higher, and just physically he looked so much happier. And so I think that in so many ways we can stop this feeling that we can make it so that people don't feel like they aren't loved. And that doesn't need to be, at the very end where you're talking somebody off the edge of suicide. That can be just the fact that when someone's having a bad day, you help them out. And, if you're about to say something rude, you stop and you think about it.
Yep.
And you just put yourself in everybody else's shoes and you think, how can I live with kindness today? And how can I live with love today? And realize that nobody is perfect and everybody is just, waking up, trying the best that they can to do the best that they can. And sometimes we wake up and we can't really do anything that day. And sometimes, despite trying our best isn't very good. And we need to be able to meet people at that point, and we need to be able to meet them there and accept them there and push people to be the best that they can and to find their potential.
Absolutely. And it doesn't take, and I'm going to speak to all the adults here because we just all got schooled by a senior, because that's exactly how the world should work right there. Is you don't have to go and hug people. If that's not your thing, that's not your thing, whatever, don't do it. But the world definitely needs more hugs, and we're over all of this nonsense. And so let's go back to,
show your face.
yes, let's show our faces. Let's smile at each other. But that's exactly the point. Are you smiling at people? Are you holding a door open for someone? Are you paying it forward potentially at the coffee shop? Are you seeing someone on the street and giving them $5? Are you doing, like, what are you doing to make people's lives better? Doesn't matter what's going on in their world, because like you just said, you know what, some days are crap and you're having a bad day and you don't know if that person just found out that their dad is sick or that their friend died or whatever the situation is. You don't know, but you also don't know what that one smile can do or that one nice gesture can do for somebody. So instead of us all being rude and siloed and independent, how about we start being the community we're meant to be? And that doesn't mean that you have to go door to door shaking people's hands and doing whatever, but just be a nice person. Let's just try being nice for 5 minutes and see the world change.
I want to speak a little bit to, so actually today in one of my classes, we were talking about social media and love and stuff like that. And the girl that was sitting next to me brought up this amazing point, and she said, I think that a lot of times it's not that we feel like we're better than others, but it feels like we're worse than others. Yes. Right? So we bring ourselves down instead of, there's a lot of people who say, oh, this group of people, they just think that they're better than us. When in reality, those people probably feel like they're not good enough for you. Mm-hmm. And, to parents, your kids mimic you. Your kids learn from your actions. And so this all starts with you. This all starts with the fact that when your neighbor gets a nice new boat, you don't talk to your kids about how you're jealous of them. When your marriage is going through a rough time and the neighbor's marriage seems to be perfect, you don't compare it to the neighbor's marriage. You don't compare skills or anything that we can't change. We don't compare trials to perfection, because all of us are going through trials. And we did this object lesson today in class where my teacher had a perfectly ironed $100 bill. And he was like, how much is this worth? Well, it's worth $100, obviously.
Teach, come on.
Yeah. And then he pulled out a crumpled ball of paper, unfolded it, and it was a $100 bill. He said, how much is this worth? And it was all crumpled and ugly. And we said, well, it's still worth $100. I still want that money. I'll still happily accept that. Mm-hmm. And he dropped it. He crumpled it back up. He dropped it on the ground and he stomped on it. And he said, well, how much is it worth now? And well, yeah, it's still worth $100. I could still take that to the store. He got out his water cup and he poured water all over it on the ground, picked it up, sopping wet. And he said, how much is it worth? And the answer was still $100. And so just because we don't look happy, just because we don't, we're not portraying on the outside everything that is good, or at least we don't feel like we are, doesn't mean that everything else is perfection, and it doesn't lessen our value anymore. Just because we're going through struggles doesn't mean we're any less of a human. It doesn't mean that we don't deserve to live and breathe and be loved. And so I think it's just that thought of like parents, you have to teach yourself that your kid's value does not depend whatsoever on what they have, what they look like, what kind of person they are, what skills they have. It is not dependent whatsoever on any of those things. They are human. They are worth love. They are worth life, and they get to breathe as long as they want to, and they get to do whatever with their life. Whatever they want to do with their life, they get to do that.
Yep.
And when we can teach our kids that by example, when we can teach our kids that by trying to get the envy out of our lives and trying to stop comparing ourselves to Susan next door with the brand new Malibu, or Karen next door with the lawn that's always beautifully green and her husband cuts it twice a day. When we stop comparing ourselves to those people, that's when we teach our kids that it's okay to be you, and you don't have to be the person that everybody else wants you to be. I think that the hardest part of high school for me is like, because it's such a small pool, there's such a little amount of labels. So
Yeah.
I have such a hard time like identifying myself, right? Because we
Yeah.
feel like we have to put a label on ourselves.
Right.
And your labels are limited to theater kid, band kid, choir kid, orchestra, football, a jock,
a dork.
yeah,
Yep.
a misfit.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
there's not enough labels to actually figure out who you are.
Right.
And once we can tell our kids that like you are human and you are you. For me, I'm not anything but Smith Alley. That is my label.
Mhm.
And I can make that label mean whatever I want it to mean.
Yep.
But at the same time, the things that I do not define me. Just because I play lacrosse does not mean I'm going to fit in with the jocks.
Right.
Just because I sing in choir doesn't mean I fit in with all of the choir kids. There isn't a label that fits me. And when I can realize that, and when I can realize that that is the same for other people, I can understand them better and have compassion for more kids. And I think that starts with adults.
Certainly. It starts at home. It's something that we have to model, and we as adults have to step up and really be there for our children. We've always said on our podcast, it's time for adults to take accountability. Even it goes back to childhood trauma we often talk about, and really healing ourselves so then we don't carry that on into the next generation and passing that on to our children. So, and really just loving them unconditionally, allowing them and holding a place for them, even if they make mistakes, knowing, okay, how do we move forward from this and learn from it and grow from it versus harping on it, and then you lose your kid and then usually they'll rebel on you. So really just taking accountability and listening to your child and knowing that they're not alone and you're going to be there for them, then it really does create that different bond with your child. And another thing that I saw you talking about that I want to touch on was the prevention. And when you were talking about the suicide and how social media and people would post when someone passes away or something tragic happens, you see it all over social media and you see everyone caring. But then within usually 2 to 3 weeks, it's like, okay, now it's done. So and you had stated like on there, basically saying, what did we learn from that experience? And so I love how you were talking about the prevention and being there as a community and learning and being together versus waiting until the tragedy and then coming together. So oftentimes people wait and don't support one another, or don't let that person know, hey, I see you, I recognize you, until something tragic happens, and then you see the community. So I love that aspect too, even for adults, is checking in with one another, and whether it be family, friends, and don't wait for something tragic to happen to then show that they're loved.
Yeah. I think that, unfortunately, I think that everything that we do today is kind of just a public stunt. And it's kind of just a PR show.
Yep.
And that doesn't even have to be for corporations or companies or celebrities or anybody famous. Everything in high school that people post on their Snapchat or their Visco, it's just a PR stunt. And, I saw that when someone in my community took their life, people who rarely even talked to that person were posting,
I'm
rest
so
in peace.
sorry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. And, there's the thought of, well, where were you, 3 weeks ago? And I asked myself that, where were you, Smith, 3 weeks ago when you saw him in the hall with his hood over his head and his AirPods in? Where were you then? And you're sorry now, but you weren't sorry then. And you didn't act upon that the prompting that you had to go and ask him if he was okay and ask him how he was doing. So where were you then? And now where are you now? Because now it's been 3 weeks and you don't talk about them. Now it's been 3 weeks and you've completely forgotten them. You've moved on from your life. And I just can't do that. Every day I have to wake up remembering all of those people, remembering all of the people that I've lost, all of the people that I've hurt. And I've had to like move forward with that because we have to learn from our mistakes. And we can't, not everything can be a PR stunt. We can't post about someone who's lost their life because we're just looking for acceptance and we're looking for somebody to tell us that they're sorry.
Right.
If right, if I'm a kid who posts on my story about someone who lost their life and I didn't even know them and I say, Brock, I miss you so much. I wish that I could have been there for you. And then somebody Snapchats me and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know that you were close." What I'm looking for is I'm looking for that acceptance.
Right.
I'm not looking I'm not looking to honor or commemorate or remember the person who lost their life. I'm looking to get acceptance from someone else.
It becomes
And
about you and not about them.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that we have to get into this idea that like the world does not revolve around you.
Yep.
And what you do and what yeah, that's what I hate about social media is so self-centered and it's about you and people comment on you and they comment on your fake life and all the lies that you're living and we don't realize that like we made a mistake and we weren't there for someone or we didn't know someone and now we're just going to have to go forward and we're going to have to learn from those lessons. And so for me it was like I had to reflect back on me not being there for someone. I had to reflect back on me not making that step to just like, go put my arm around this guy who weeks later took his life and I didn't do that. And that sucks that I didn't do that. But you know, I'm not gonna post and make it about me.
Right.
Because I want to honor him and the way I'm going to honor him is in the future. And it's not a week later when I go to his celebration of life. And it's not 3 weeks later when I have a conversation about him because the funeral happened last week. It's the rest of my life is that
Mhm.
celebration. And it's the rest of my life that's that honoring because you remember them for your whole life and you remember that lesson and you take it with you and you don't let it happen again. And the next time you feel like you need to go and talk to someone and make sure they're okay, you go and talk to them.
Mhm.
And you go and you have the conversations and you give the smiles and you give the hugs and you nod to someone and you say hi and you give high fives because we can't do that over and over again. We can't live in our own shell of what if they don't smile back? What if they don't want to hug? What if they don't want to talk to me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not good enough? Because you are good enough.
Mhm.
You are good enough to make somebody else feel happy. You are good enough to make somebody else feel loved. You're good enough to make somebody else want to live one more day. And that's all we need. And so I think that we need to get into that idea of like, don't think about yourself. Don't get in your head. Just when you think that you need to go do something, go do it to help somebody.
Yeah, and I talk to my boys all the time, going back to your point about like being who you are. Like I say that there's no other person but you. God made you to do whatever you are intended to do. And that's the same thing in this situation is all of those little like nigglings you get in your head, that's God talking to you saying, this person over here needs you. This person or this thing needs you to go that direction. And we as a society, again, if you don't believe in God, that's your decision, then call it the universe, whatever it is. There are things that are directing you to go in different areas. And are you listening to that? Are you listening to the message of the universe that kind of drives you? Because eventually, either you listen to it when it's quiet or you listen to it when it's clanging you over the head. At some point, you'll hear the message. And so for me, it's always been really that make sure that you are being who you're supposed to be, because you are the only one who can be responsible for what you do. But again, to your point of it's not about you. In all of this, it's you are responsible for what you do, but don't turn this around to be everybody look at me, everyone do whatever. Because to what you said about I'm going to honor him, honoring him is a quiet thing you do and everyone else notices. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I don't have to say it. I don't have to post a square that says, look at me, I'm going to do this. No, it's the way that you react. It's the way that you live your life, and people start to see it. And I think that that's beautiful. And that is something that people will recognize. And again, it'd be really great if people took social media and were just honest on it, because you don't want to
Amen.
hear
Amen.
that somebody had a really crappy day today and they failed their test and it's because they were up late taking care of their kid or their sick sister or whatever the story is. No one wants to hear that. That's not glamorous. That's not fun. That can't get a like.
Mhm.
And so nobody posts it. But that's really what people's lives are. That's how that works. Like, oh no, but look at my outfit. It's really cute today.
Yeah. Who
Whatever.
cares?
Right.
Who cares, Karen?
Right. Right. And that's my son, like they say, because of course he's 13 and now you can get social media. And I'm like, absolutely not. What do you need social media for? Because you go to school with those kids, you see them every day. You don't need to also see them on social media. You don't need any of that. I don't want you to look at things. I said it's dangerous enough for adults. You don't need to go look at things and think that you're not good enough. I'm not doing it. We're not, you already have the 13-year-old brain of I'm not good enough because you're going through puberty and you're doing all these things. I don't need to contribute to it. And I'm going to be that parent that says, nope, sorry, I'm going to take your mental health into consideration. And I'm sorry, like we said earlier, he called me, he said, well, then I know that if you're not cool and you don't let your kids have the fun things, then you love them more or something like that. And it was a completely backhanded compliment for me to know that he understood why we didn't allow him to have it. And so it was, but again, that's my job as a parent, is to say, no, I'm sorry. I know everybody else has this, but it's not good for you. So
Totally. And that like applies. I have someone that, I have a few kids that I like work with and just try to like, push my message onto who are close to me. And one of my board members, her son is 15 years old, and he was like, oh, but I want this and I want this on my phone. And I'm like, what do you need that for? What do you need Instagram for? Because I'm 17, I'm well connected, I have friends, I do stuff on the weekends, I have a lot of extracurriculars, I'm a good lacrosse player, I have all of this stuff, and I don't need social media to do it for me. In fact, I have, I created a social media account for the nonprofit that I now run, but I'm not on it. I have someone else that does that for me because she is an adult and she doesn't get emotionally involved, and her self-worth doesn't depend on what she sees on that Instagram, whereas mine does. And I even know that like in the summer her husband was in the hospital. And so for about a week, I had to do the social media. And so I had to like re-download Instagram on my phone. And that week was the worst week of my whole summer, because even being 17 years old, even being this advocate where I'm speaking out about the harmful effects, I'm still affected.
Yeah.
And, just because I'm 17, my brain's not developed, I can't handle this kind of stuff. And then back to what you were saying about, kind of fitting in and telling your boys, the only person that you need to be is you. And that's true when you look at every close to perfect example that we've ever had on this earth, whether it be Jesus Christ or somebody like Gandhi, people that were just inherently good. Jesus sat with the sinners, but also sat with his disciples.
Yep.
Jesus sat with every kind of man that walked the earth. He would sit with them and he would love them, and he would preach his message of charity, which is the pure love. Gandhi would sit with politicians and then go and sit with those who are starving.
Right.
And you don't need to be in a group to be you. You just need to be you and then go help other people. And you need to be you and go make this world a better place. And so I love that thought of like, the only person that you need to be is you, and who you associate with and who you help, that doesn't matter if you know who you are. On the other hand, if you don't know who you are, which is something that every teenager and high school kid and lower struggles with, it's something that adults and everybody struggles with, is not knowing who you are. If you are uncertain, if you feel like you are just completely lost in the woods or drowning in the sea, surround yourself with people who know who you are. The people who know me best are my family. And so when I don't know who I am, those are the people I need to be around, because they can help me and guide me. And that's something that I still work on. My biggest struggle is self-love and being able to accept myself. And when I'm feeling like I don't know who I am, the people that I surround myself, the people that I surround myself with are the people that love me unconditionally, and the people who know who I am and aren't trying to take advantage of me. And so surround yourself with those people. I think a lot of the times, when, especially when teenagers are going into high school, there are two groups that they see automatically. And those are the kids who are miserable and misery loves company, and they show it on their sleeve. And those are the kids who, like cuss everybody out and get in fights and use drugs and stuff like that. And they're proud of it. And, they wear it on their sleeve, and they'll, no shame at all. And then there's the popular kids, quotes around popular,
Yep.
who are all faking who they are because they want to be accepted, and they don't know who they are. And a lot of the kids that I talk to who are going into high school, I tell them, just wait, be yourself. Don't rush to those two groups, because they're both miserable and misery loves company, and try and find yourself. And once you do that, then help other people find themselves, or find people who will actually help find who you are, not people who just want to have company because they're miserable.
I love
That's
that.
Yeah, that's great information. And it kind of lends back to when you were talking about having trouble in court and all of that stuff, and the accusation. Because if you're not true to who you are, then other people can't stand up for you. We actually had an issue, and it was nothing like that, but my now sixth grader last year, the assistant principal at the end of the year called me and said, well, I have a girl's mom on the phone, and we have witnesses that say that your son pushed her on the playground. And I was like, well, I mean, he could have, but that's just really not who he is. Now, if you were playing with him and he tripped you, yeah, maybe, okay, that's fine. But he's just not a bully kind of kid. And I'm not saying that my kid's perfect, so don't take that the wrong way. But I was like, no. And the fact that you have witnesses, like, what are we doing here? This is fifth grade. What the hell? Well, he just happened to tell me the story beforehand that him and this girl were fighting to get a football at the playground, and their legs got tripped up and she fell down. Well, I mean, he's a fifth grade boy. He was going to win. Like, that was his thing. And if she's going to play with the big boy, she's probably going to get hurt. So that's where it is. But it was a very, very big lesson to him, because the principal came in and made everyone write down what it is that happened. And all of the boys wrote out exactly what he said was they just tangled feet and they tripped, and the girls were trying to take the ball and all this sort of stuff. And I said to him, you realize that because you are who you're supposed to be, and you're honest and you're truthful and you do what's good, that you have other people in your friends and other people in your class that will stand up next to you when these sorts of things happen, so that when it isn't your son pushed my daughter and it becomes something bigger and could end you up in court, are you making sure that you have the right people around you?
Totally. Yeah, I think it's really important, especially for young men today, to be above reproach. Of course, I think that young men who do I think that people who take advantage of other people, I think I'll agree with Ben Shapiro when he said rapists should have their balls cut off and they should be put in jail. I completely agree with that. But at the same time, there's a lot of victimization in our society where, we pity ourselves and we want to again be accepted and taken care of. And it turns to me. And then we have victims like this. And that's not a good thing either. And it comes back to this point where, you have you have people who, young men have to be above reproach because something like this is going to happen, and there should be no doubt in anybody's mind that something like that ever happened, right?
Mhm.
And just like when you were called, you were like, there's no way he did that, not just because he had just told you the story and it seemed pretty reasonable, but because you know who he is.
Mm.
And the other thing there is that you admitted that he's not perfect, right? Because there's a lot of parents who would be like, oh, my son never did that, he's
Right.
perfect, he's a
Mhm.
gem, he's never done anything wrong in his life.
Yeah.
But when you're able to say, he is imperfect, he makes mistakes, but he's not a bully,
This
he's
isn't
a
one
nice
of
kid.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's really special. And so I just think that this idea, and again, where you went to like, what is this? It's fifth grade. What are we doing? I mean, teachers having kids coming in and like writing down statements. You're not a detective. You are not,
Right?
you are not working a case or anything. We're dealing with kids who have emotions that they don't know what they are. Let's talk about that. We're not bullying in, we're not going into the principals, the judge, and the fifth grade homeroom teacher is the prosecutor. We're not
Right.
going to do that. Let's talk about emotions. Let's talk about taking accountability. Let's
Right.
talk to our boys about, hey, this is what happens when you're playing sports with girls. You are gentle. You should be gentle, and try and make sure that things like that don't happen. And girls, this is not a society of, we cannot build a society of they hurt me, of just because I'm hurt, they hurt me. Because
Yes.
sometimes you get hurt just because we're humans and we're living on earth. And and then like parents, why are we doing this? Like, again, it's this proving that other people are wrong and trying to better yourself because you don't feel worthy. And so we're going to go into this full blown like court situation in fifth grade. I think that's ridiculous. Um, it just points to the fact that we all just need to talk about our feelings more, and
Right.
we all just need to be able to like look at life as it happens and look at facts, and then take our feelings and not intermingle those feelings with facts, and not let facts be changed because of feelings, but not let
Right.
feelings be ignored, and say, I feel this way, this is what happened, and this is how we're going to deal with it.
Mhm.
I completely agree. Like my daughter, she would often get in trouble at school for being the outspoken one and like defending if somebody was bullying another kid. And she was tall for her age. So she would always get in trouble for being so outspoken. Well, usually it got to the point where I'm like, okay, so now are you interrupting class? So, or it was at recess and then one person's story got twisted and then they would like, oh, well, these three people said this, and it goes back to that court situation. So finally it got to a point where there was like these group of girls and it was like the same issue for like three weeks in a row. And so I was like, you know what? I'm done with the phone calls. Like this is stupid. Like, yes, I'm her parent, but at the same time, you're the teacher. Like, do I really need to be pulled out of work for this? So I was like, let's have all of you in the principal's office, and all of us will sit there together with her. And they're like, well, we really appreciate your daughter for being honest, and she did admit to what she did. And I'm like, yeah, because in our house, like I teach, like it's better to be honest and tell the truth, because you're going to get in more trouble if you lie. Like, don't lie, you're going to get in more trouble. And later down the road, if that becomes a habit and a toxic trait, it catches up with you. So that was one thing that they always were like, well, we appreciate her for being honest, but she still got in trouble because she was defending the other kid. So we finally came to a point where I was like, you know what, let's all sit down. Like, why is this happening? What is she saying? And then it was just the fact of there's this one teacher, she would like to argue with the kids and go back and forth and like, well, I'm right, I'm the teacher. And so it got to the point where it was like they finally sat in a room where she wasn't comfortable with telling the teacher that, but it was like, well, why do you act like this? What are your feelings? Like, and she's like, well, she just likes to argue with me and I'm not answering, I'm just explaining myself. And then she, like, it was just a back and forth thing. And I'm like, this is a grown adult arguing with a
Right.
kid. And I'm like, I'm not saying my kid is wrong, you shouldn't be answering, you shouldn't be disrespectful to the teacher, but at the same time, if you're asking my kid like why she did that, she's going to tell you why she did that and what happened. So again, it goes back to recognizing those emotions and giving the kid and the benefit and letting them explain themselves and not playing that playing them against each other, because that could be detrimental as well to kids in class,
And as an
especially
adult,
when it goes to fitting in.
as an adult, you'd think their emotional stability was a little bit more solid than arguing with an 11-year-old. Like, what
Right.
the hell?
Amen. That puts them on a new low, I think.
Right? Exactly.
Now for our listeners, and for whether it be parents, if we want to do one for parents, and then for teenagers, what would be a way that you handle adversity, especially being an advocate and all the work that you do? How do you respond to adversity, whether it be social media or even on campus, and dealing with even advocate work as well?
Yeah, I think that this is something that I've really struggled with because you know, I have a passion that all, if not, most, if not all high schoolers don't have.
Yep.
And, I have ideology and I think ways that high schoolers don't think. And like, to be brutally honest, I get a lot of slack for it at school. I get teased a lot. I'm like I'm a fairly popular kid at school. Most people know who I am. And so honestly, like when my friends or people that I know, like say just, tease me or say whatever, because no one comes up to me and they're like, hey, what you're doing is stupid and I really hate you and you suck, because they're not going to say that. That's not,
My mom took my phone away because of you.
yeah, totally. I think that bullying has changed a lot over the years. And I think that bullying now is just jokes that hit too close to home. And that way kids get away with it. And so like when I hear these jokes, honestly, it's just fuel for me. I'm in this space where I've been in the position where most young men are. I'm in the space where when I see someone come and like make a joke about, oh, Smith, I'm gonna go watch porn after school. How do you feel about that? When I see those things, I'm like, you know what, dude? I hope you have fun. And when you're ready to change, come see me.
You know where to
And
find me. Yep.
yeah, and we can talk because I'm gonna keep doing this. And one day you're gonna need help. And on that day, you're gonna come to me because you know that I'm here to help you. And on that day, we're gonna have a talk, right? And then you're gonna take back everything that you've ever said. And that's my fuel, is that I'm gonna keep going because one day you're gonna need help and I'm gonna be there to give it to you. And the same goes for parents. I'd say for parents, I think the biggest thing that I can tell you is be proactive, not reactive. There are so many times that I go to someone that I know, whether it be like a friend of my parents or someone in my neighborhood, and I'm like, hey, you have kids age this to this. I'd like to come talk to them or help you set up your tech. I think it'd be really great. And they're like, oh, Smith, we really love what you're doing, but I just don't think that's for us. We're not having those
Not my
problems in our
kid.
house right now.
They're
Yeah,
not
not
mine.
my kid. And then 2 to 3 months later, we get a call and these parents are panicking because they've just realized that, their son is watching porn, or one of their kids just attempted suicide, and now they're freaking out. And that happens way too much. So be proactive, do the right thing now so that you don't have to do a million right things later. And honestly, like, it's okay. Like, I think that for me, this has become my mission, and this is something that I'll do for the rest of my life. I'll be helping people for the rest of my life, but not everybody has to look like that. And not everybody has to step in this space where like your career and your passion and the thing that you spend all of your time on is helping people with mental health or pornography. That doesn't have to be you. Again, it just goes back to those things like be the nice person, smile, give people hugs, ask people how they're doing. Be willing to have genuine conversations with the people that you're close to, because oftentimes it's the people closest to you that are struggling the most. And so I think that with that, with that, I think that there is a lot of responsibility that has to be taken. I think that we're all scared to take that responsibility, to take that step, and to kind of step into that light, because it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
And I understand that. I understand that to change your family's media habits, tech habits, to help your kids, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that like people know that there's more out there. And I tell kids all the time, like, there is so much that you could do if you just put down the things that you're wasting your time with, if you take your battles head on. One of my good friends says, it is better to stand and fight, because if you run, you will only die tired. So if you take your problems, take your struggles, take your trials, take your fears and face them head on, look at them and overcome them, learn to live with them. I think that there's a potential that you can unlock that's amazing, and you can do whatever you put your mind to. Every goal that I set a year ago, I've accomplished, and I'm going to continue to accomplish goals and do everything like that.
That's amazing.
Well, it is such a blessing to talk to you today and to hear what you're doing. And I know for me, it gives me hope for your generation that we're actually going to get somewhere, and we're going to go somewhere. And like I had said, we actually had lunch earlier with a friend of ours and said, I have some really good faith that we're going to get in a good spot, because we have people like myself, and I'm sure your parents, who are there fighting this and figuring it out and trying to do it. And then we have kids that are out there like you, and even my son, who are there telling their friends that, no, this is not okay, and being that one kind of beacon out there that is trying to warn people, but also, like you said, know that you're going to need me someday. And so you may disregard me right now, but when it happens, you'll remember that I was the one saying it. And so to continue to stand in your light and stand in what you're doing, it is absolutely wonderful. And I bless you. I hope that everything goes well with you, your companies. Please, parents, be proactive. We have this conversation all the time. Take the phones away, but replace it with things to do. Replace it with yourself. Make sure that you are still there. You are still present. Put your own damn phone down. I know that we as adults have issues with that as well. Go on a walk, go exercise, go on a vacation, go to the store, go do whatever. Really live life bigger. That's exactly why that's the name of the foundation, is because that is what we need to all be doing. And we need to be proactive. Yeah, we don't want to believe it's going to happen to our kids, but as I said, even something as simple as another friend asking my son if he watched porn. It happens to everybody. And are you going to allow you to be the one to stand up and take care of your kids? You're going to let their friends handle it. And so thank you so much for your time today. This has been great. Parents, I hope that you share this with your kids. If nothing more than as what a great example this young man is to the world, and to really fully live into your potential of what it is that you are here on earth to do.
Yeah. And real quick, I just want to say, for those of you parents and kids who feel like you just don't know where to start on a pathway to something better, know that you're not alone. Know that there are people in your shoes, and there are people who are willing to help you get on that path that you want to be. And that really, like, what me and my family realized is that when we were willing, and when when we decided to step out into this light and decide to put ourselves out there, we found an army, and we found a family that's like unbreakable, and we found people who have become our greatest of friends. And if you want to step into that light, if you want to get onto that path, like, just reach out, just join a community. Whether that's, the Live Life Bigger community, just join out and reach out, and you'll find a family, you'll find an army. You can find my nonprofit on Instagram at live.life.bigger. You can message us whenever, if you need help, if you need resources on how to help your kids, on how to live a more fulfilling life, whatever that is. Like, once you are willing to just ask for help, once you are willing to ask for those resources, and I think, again, it's just to be vulnerable about where you are. People can help you. And you can also visit us at www.livelifebigger.org, again, to figure out how you can help your kids and how you can live a life that is bigger and beyond the screens, because it really is magical once you set your phone down and you just decide to connect and love, because that's what humans were meant to do. We were meant to have connections and love and to be with each other. And so I think that's amazing. I'm so glad that you guys had me on here. It's been a pleasure to record, and I'm excited to hear this episode and to see where you guys continue to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. We truly appreciate it. And you even inspire us as parents. You've taught us so much. So again, thank you. And just as we wrap up, I want to really hold this place with it being as far as Suicide Awareness Month. I love the song that you and your sister made.
That was awesome.
So as our last takeaway, I really want to hold this place for anyone struggling, whether it be addiction with the vape, the drugs, alcohol, child abuse, and you have those suicidal thoughts. What is some advice, especially coming from a teen and your generation with the pressure society? Oftentimes we put children in a box. What is some advice for anyone struggling with suicidal thoughts or depression, anything along those lines? What would be a takeaway from being a teen and what you're seeing on campus?
Yeah, I think that if you are struggling with not wanting to live in this life, if you are struggling with being done doing your day to day, the first thing that you should do is stop trying to escape. Everything that we do as high schoolers, as adults, as kids, we, especially on technology and social media, we are always trying to escape. You have friends that are hanging out with their friends, but while they're doing that, they're Snapchatting other people and they're trying to be in a million conversations at once. We have people who, no matter where they are, they want to be somewhere else, or they want to be somebody else. And we are just always escaping and numbing to not have to deal with our feelings and not have to live in this life in the present. So I'd say the first thing is just try and live now, and try and just be okay with where you are in the current time. And when you're willing to accept that, when you're willing to be content with where you are, but yet still be motivated and determined to get to where you want to go, I think that can help a lot. The other thing is, again, like, support yourself with an army, find friends who love you, find family that loves you. I truly believe that friends are the family that you get to choose. My friends, to me, are my family. I'll do anything for them. And so find people that will support you, and surround yourself with good people. Then the last thing, just know that you are already, as a human, a 1 in a million chance, and you made it. Just the fact that you were born, you are 1 in a million. And because of that, you deserve the right to be loved, and you deserve the right to breathe, and you deserve the right to live. And if you don't have that, if you don't want that, just keep looking for something or someone, keep looking for yourself, and try and find that. Try and find that desire to do something. Try and find the desire to help other people, to help yourself, to love yourself. There is a meditative technique that I really love that I'm going to share with you guys, just as kind of a closing note of, so it's called Mangi. I think it's a Buddhist technique. And it's the idea that every morning you wake up and there's smoke surrounding your heart. And if you don't deal with that smoke surrounding your heart, you will be choked out and you will die. So every morning you breathe in the smoke and you let it out. And as you let that smoke out, the light inside your heart dissipates that smoke, and the smoke disappears. And when you do that to yourself first, when you give every morning, you give to yourself before you give to anyone else. You love yourself, then you have stuff to give. And then you can go over to others, the smoke around them, breathe in their smoke, and let it all out. And their smoke dissipates. and then they can go and do that to others. And when you're able to first love yourself, then you can love others. Because if not, if you wake up and the first thing you do is go over to your mother or your dad or your siblings and you try and breathe in their smoke, let it all out, it might work. It might work once, but then you go through your day and you do that to your friends and your teachers and your coworkers, and you do that to everyone that you come in contact with. The smoke is still around your heart because you didn't take care of your smoke that morning. And you have to do that first, or else you will be choked out. You will die. And that's, kind of a mental health metaphor there. And so I think like practice that in not only like technique in doing that exercise every morning, but just, always have it as a thought is I'm going to give to myself and then I'm going to give to others. And I think that takes you out of the selfishness that we talked about. And I think that it takes you out of the depressive state and out of the lack of self-love. And so I think that's something that's changed my life, even through my journey of recovery and, high school. And to this day, sometimes I struggle with loving myself. And this is something that's helped me and affected me immensely, is just being able to, give to myself first every morning and then go give to others.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. And we will make sure to list all of the social media handles, website, everything for the nonprofits in our show notes as well. And again, from us, thank you so much. We wish you nothing but success, and anything that we can do to help you on your journey and everything that you're doing, we're here for you as well. Know that you're not alone, whether it be anyone on our podcast or that you see in our community. We're glad to share that with you as well, and really just grow together and continue to spread love and light all over the US and even in the UK, all over the world. We've connected with so many amazing people and have such a big army around us as well. And so again, hopefully next time that we see you, we'll see your whole wall in your bedroom covered with all those sticky notes of everyone that you're impacting all over the globe. So again, thank you, especially for being as young as you are. You don't see people, let alone teens, talking about any of these uncomfortable conversations. So you being as mature as you are and really globally inspiring the world. So know that anything that you need from us, we're here for you as well. And we're here to help. Survivors, of course, survivors and anyone struggling with mental health, whether whatever it may be, just know that you're not alone. Survivors, as always, we see you, we hear you, we stand by you, sending you love, light, and blessings.